Hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode 105 of At the Coffee Table Podcast. I am Jason Klink here with my co-host Bob Kahn. Bob, how are you today?
Hi, you like my new house?
Yeah, that's a great new house you built there. Some great
It's beautiful.
renovations.
I want to find it. I like it. I don't play
Yeah, right.
piano. It looks cool.
Yeah. So today our topic of the podcast, and we had a bit of a kind of a break in between podcast episodes because life happens. But the topic of the podcast today is what does freedom actually mean? And Bob and I got in this conversation 2 weeks ago about the meaning of freedom and what it might mean. Um, it, and it's interesting because in America you may think of freedom in a constitutional sense, republic sense. In another part of the world, it may mean I just got to find food for today, kind of situation.
Yeah,
Freedoms and liberties are, well, they're up for interpretation. I think mostly these days. Um,
yeah. It seems to be the general census. Freedom, a simple word, can mean so many different things to so many different people.
right?
If you're in the middle of a war like in Ukraine, not the Ukraine, you're probably not you're fighting for the right to be free and freedom, but you're not free. There is no freedom right now.
Right,
Here in this country, arguable,
right,
questionable. I know for me personally, freedom is having the finances to do what I want, legally, of course, when I want, where I want to do it, whenever I want to do it. Um, Freedom of speech. Well, everybody thinks that means you can say anything, anytime, anywhere, completely tactless and rude. Well, that's not really what it would mean. But that's what freedom means to me, the ability to move around, the ability to think what I want to think, and if I feel like it, say what I want,
right.
which unfortunately gets stretched in our
Yes.
world.
Yep.
How
Yeah.
about you?
And I would take that a step further of having the freedom to provide the basic needs, the whole Maslow hierarchy of needs of shelter and food and safety. But having the ability to not only have that, but base your life around your own set of morals and beliefs, ethics, um, without infringing on the freedoms of somebody else based on those moral beliefs and ethics.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, everybody has the right to be who they want to be,
that's
how
right.
they want to be, as long as it, like you said, doesn't infringe on somebody else. Problem that we're having in our nation today is even though it doesn't really infringe, people feel like it does, and they have to
Yeah.
say something or do something about it.
Yeah.
Um, and to me, that's not freedom. That's anarchy.
Yeah. Yeah. You think about it like, um, there, there's that, and this is my own true belief and nobody else's, but, I believe that there's a 1% elite right now that have gained so much power that they get to dictate freedoms and the everyday, life here, especially in the U.S. Um, and that's way it was never. I'd like to think that that was the way it was never intended to be, but then I started thinking about some other things after our conversation,
Of course.
and right, and like last weekend, uh, yeah, laid up with the flu, and why not lay on the couch and watch TV? So, um, we're laying there and we're watching the movie. It was called "You People," I think that's what it was, and it was Eddie Murphy was in it. the other comedian. I can't think of his name of off the top of my head. But they had a lot of bigger actors in it. But the premise of the movie was a very Jewish guy, his very Jewish family. The Jewish guy he fell in love with and was going to marry a Black American woman, and they had to try to meld these two families together. And it had a lot of different flavors to it as far as Black America and the Jewish community and the history that goes into both. And I started to think about, what, really depending on where you're at in your life, if you're a Jewish person in a Jewish family or a Black American in your family and your family's history and everything, that really dictates your lens as it comes to freedoms. And do freedoms and lack thereof.
Yeah, environment definitely plays a part in how you think. I did
Yeah,
a post the other day that said, "Do you vote the way your parents did or do? Do you root for teams that your parents did or do?"
right.
Obviously, environment is big.
Yes.
Now, growing up in a Jewish family, my mother used to say the wonderful statement, "It's just as easy to fall in love for money as it is for love," which I went, okay. But she also would say, "It would be nice if you married a nice Jewish girl."
Right.
I hadn't even thought about having a girlfriend yet. I think it's when she started.
Oh, jeez.
And I imagine that, obviously, I have no understanding, but or knowledge. If you're in a black family, chances are you would, again, I could be wrong, but it's possible that you were raised in the environment where marry a black person. I don't care. The airways are just carrying so many interracial commercials. Now, part of it is obviously you want to sell to everybody. The other part is to shove it in their face. Those who
Yeah.
don't like the idea of interracial marriages.
Right.
Um, but I can remember there wasn't a single African American in my high school, and I didn't know of anybody who was dating a black girl or a black man. If you know,
Right.
and today it's commonplace.
Sure.
I the one thing I loved about the high school my kids went to, it was totally integrated to the point where everybody was with everybody. You know,
Yes.
and that's freedom. That's the whole idea of this country. Here is the preamble to the Constitution. Everybody,
There will be a quiz at the end.
right? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. High ideals, living up to it, kind of like with the Declaration of Independence, it's tough. But we have the right, according to them, the divine given right to be free,
Right.
to think the way we want to think, to have and the religion we want to have. Nowhere in the Constitution that I've ever read or in the Declaration of Independence said, if you don't like it, I'm going to beat your ass. That's not freedom.
No, and it's like we've talked about in previous episodes too, and this day and age in the 21st century, the fact that there's systemic racism, there's really biases of all types, but and it just shouldn't exist. It shouldn't. We should all have, and we realistically all have the same access to the same abilities to excel as human beings as the next person.
Right.
Um, there's a group of people that use the victim card based on those type of biases way farther than they should. But there's also people that are making sure that their cause, their momentum forward is based on squashing. group of other people to get there.
Mhm.
Um, I think that a lot, even the Constitution, which I'm a constitutionalist by heart, but um, if you think about it, even in the pre-colonial times or the colonial times when they're writing the Constitution and stuff, there was still systemic racism because there was slavery, and not just African Americans being enslaved, but there was slavery across the world because there was different caste systems and so on.
Well,
And realistically, it all came down to power. Who had the most power over who?
what's changed?
Right. Yeah, exactly. What's
We
changed?
had this discussion. Did excuse me, was the revolution fought out, the American Revolution, in case anybody who's not in the America, in the United States, was it fought for freedom the way we're talking about it? Or was it fought to keep the power elite in power so
Yes.
but to eliminate the taxes that they didn't want to pay because they weren't getting any benefit out of it?
Right.
So we'll let that people decide for themselves. We've all heard freedom of speech. What does that actually mean? Does that mean that I can call you names? Yeah. Does it make it right? No.
No.
I thought it was absolutely disgusting that elected officials, I'm not going to name names, everybody knows who did, were calling out and booing and yelling things and calling the president of the United States a liar. It was disgusting when they did it to Obama. It's just gotten worse, and now it seems to be an accepted way of talking. There is no tact. It's
Yeah.
totally rude. That's not freedom. Yeah, do you have the right? Yes, you can do that. But there's certain times it's like you can't yell fire in a movie theater if there's no fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And,
know,
and
when
going back to that State of the Union address too, it's like everything else that goes on in the American politics is, how over the top can we be? How over the top can we be to push our own agendas? And you would when Trump is president and he's doing his State of the Union, the Republicans are all jumping out of their seats and clapping everything. But then you flip the script and now you have Biden as president and he does a State of a Union address and Nancy Pelosi about falls out of her chair trying to jump out of it. But before, when Trump was standing up there, she just sat there with her arms crossed.
it's
You know,
this is a country, might have always been this way, but it was well hidden, of hate. It's tribalism to the max. That's
yep,
not, you have the right. Yeah, doesn't make it right, but you have the right under this document. Or do we? It used to be when I was in high school, we were taught of there was one elastic clause in the Constitution. Pardon me, I don't remember which one it was. It seems like they're all kind of elastic these days. Um, do African Americans, trans women, a lot of Latinos, do they have true freedom? I don't think so. I We had this discussion the other day. It was, I have no way, and I never will understand what it feels like to have to tell my children, when you see a police officer, put put your hands up, don't say anything, be nice, to have to be afraid that my kid might not come home from school. Why? Because he's black.
yeah,
That's not freedom. It's,
no, it's not.
this
It's not,
country,
and it shouldn't happen.
this country is going through a change that, to me, many people don't like.
Right.
You know, Caucasian people are not the dominant people anymore, and that really bugs the Caucasian people who feel that white is right. You know, and this nation was built not by white people, by every color on earth, every race on earth, every country pretty much was represented. And yet, when the Chinese came to work on the railroads, they were beaten and smashed, and they were just killed in L.A. during the 1840s. People generally don't like change, apparently, but they really don't like it when it's affecting the way they think about themselves and the way they should be in power. Now you add money to it, you know, this less than 1% of the population has more than 99.5% of the wealth. Well, what's wrong with this picture?
Right. Right.
You know, but again, we got to go back to the revolution, pre-revolution. Those who put this country together were the rich.
Oh yeah.
So instead
Yep.
of by the people for the people, it's by the rich for the rich. Now it's by the companies for the companies. The public be damned.
Yeah.
Um, we, the people, we've said this so many times in our discussions, we, the people, have the freedom, we have the right to overthrow this government. Now, I'm not advocating a revolution or a civil war.
Be careful. People will be climbing the steps of the Capitol.
I'm not advocating that in any way, shape, or form, but we have the right to vote.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is people really only think about voting when it comes time to vote. They don't think about who's running.
Right.
I'm guilty of that in my local politics. I don't, I really don't have that. I don't have any kids in school, so I'm not really, I don't own a house in the town. So I'm kind of standing back from caring that much about the taxes. I pay my income tax. I don't pay because I don't own any property right now. Um, but I do take an interest before if well, I've never heard of this before. I'll do a little bit of research, but on a more national scale or a more statewide scale, I take a bit bigger interest because that can affect me and will affect me. Um, I don't. I think everybody has the freedom and the right to vote for whomever they please. I don't have to agree with them any more than they have to agree with me.
Right.
But stop yelling in my face because I support Biden or Obama or Trump or whatever. All right. We obviously wear different lenses depending on which side of the track you're on. And we're slowly but surely, probably since 2001 or earlier, losing those freedoms. And that's what scares me the most.
Yeah.
Um,
And I've talked about it before. How, uh, it, looking back at U.S. history, this has always been the country of opportunity. The most opportunity you could have to start a business, to be successful, to raise a family, to get good education. The United States has always been the land of opportunity. But if you look at where we're at today with just politics, it started 80 years ago. Socialism started creeping into democracy 80 years ago in this country.
right,
And
During Roosevelt's
yeah,
presidency.
yeah, when Roosevelt
But there was a
started getting
reason
into
for it.
what's that?
Wasn't there a reason for it? The country was in desperate state.
Yeah. Yep, it was, you know what, the politicians were desperate to end the depression, and that's what they came up with, is making the uh the people of this country reliant on the government. Um
It
so
definitely expanded. you know,
right. And I chuckled the other day because what's her name? Lauren Boebert. She's a congressperson,
yeah,
congresswoman,
Colorado,
and she would what's that?
from Colorado, the Colorado.
Colorado. Yeah, and she had tweeted the other day about something that Biden said, and it wasn't capitalism, it was socialism. And I'm like, well, what are you surprised about? That's been the Democratic way for 80 years. Um,
And everybody, even the ones who are opposed to it, benefit from it. And yet, I mean, should they take everything started out except for Social Security? Everything started out as a bootstrap program. the
Yep.
TVA, the WPA, to help get the country restarted. They forgot to take it off the table afterwards. I mean, should people have a chance to get a leg up with welfare? Yeah, probably to a point. But people, there's generations that have stayed on welfare, which
Yes.
wasn't the idea.
Right.
And what I find amazing is, especially Medicare, is because one, I'm a Medicarer, I'm a senior citizen. I care very much about it. What pisses me off the most is those that want to get rid of it or steal it. It's not your money. It's my money and your money. You don't pay
Yeah.
in, so you can't take out.
Yeah.
Again, sticking to the topic of freedom, it's been stretched beyond the limit of what it really means. Just because you think it's a good idea to do something stupid doesn't mean everybody has to follow you. You
Right.
have the right and the freedom to say it, but think before you open your damn mouth.
Yeah, it's just if you we all have the freedom to express ourselves and to share our opinions and share our point of views and to share our convictions, but we don't have the freedom to impose that on somebody else. And this has been going on for generations, and I get it. But when you got folks that they're expressing their personal beliefs, they're expressing their point of view on a topic, and it could be any topic, but then they take it as to an extreme point where they either infringe on somebody else's freedoms or they start breaking laws. That's a problem. It should never get there. We don't have the freedom, and you don't get the right to break laws and act like a jackass just to prove a point. You don't get to go out and be angry about something that's gone on in the world and start looting and robbing and burglarizing businesses just because the opportunity's there to do it. That doesn't prove a
And
point.
I agree, but what never made sense, besides the fact you shouldn't do it, is you're doing it in your own neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like if I was, around me, there's a lot of very, very, very white collar towns. One of them's called Short Hills. Another one's called Summit. Big money, big money. I mean, you got multi-million-dollar mansions and stuff. If I if I was going to rob a house, I wouldn't rob it in my neighborhood. I go up there because the change going to if you get caught, it doesn't matter where you did it. You're going to jail. But
Yeah.
if I'm successful,
Yeah, right. Look at how short-sighted too over history, and not just US history, or short-sighted over the years, and how paranoid and ridiculous things have got. Like I was watching a show the other day, and they were talking about um it must have been the First World War in England, and there was a large, or not a large, but there was a decent amount of Italian restaurants. Had to have been World War II, not World War One. But
World War,
anyways,
World War,
Mussolini, yeah,
World War.
Mussolini takes power, and now there's anti-Italian uh, movements going on, just like anti-Japanese, anti-German. But because there was this anti-Italian going on because of Mussolini, um, restaurants, and I believe this is how it went. I could be wrong, but restaurants that were Italian restaurants that were in England decided to take anything Italian off the front of their restaurant. Some of them went to as far as recreating Italian dishes to seem like French dishes because of the anti-Italian sentiments that were going on. They were even rounding up Italian men and throwing them into a camp in England, not even the U.S., in England, throwing them into a camp because they were scared that they were going to create violence because they were from Italy.
You know, I'm not aware. Probably there might have been, but I know that thousands upon thousands of native-born Japanese Americans, um, or should have said American-born Japanese Americans, were put into concentration camps, resettlement camps. I think some Germans were rounded up, but nowhere near the numbers of the Japanese. I wonder why that is. Forget the fact that they bombed Pearl Harbor. That's part of it, obviously.
Right.
And well, we're doing it for your safety. I didn't bomb Pearl Harbor.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was the, but I'm not pointing to my glasses. I'm pointing to my skin. They were German. They were us.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
When I was in the army, it was perfectly okay to to call the Vietnamese names: Zipperhead, Gook, and
Yeah.
Slant Eye. All this thing because they were them. They were the enemy.
Right.
Yeah, we called the Germans some catchy phrases too, but it wasn't the same. We are. Do you ever see Gangs of New York?
Yes.
Okay, 5 points. The ones who got here first took offense to other people encroaching in their land. That was the whole point of the gangs in New York. Because they were white Europeans, so the English ones, they got here. Then the Irish came. They did not like that because they didn't like the Irish, so they beat the shit. They always are constantly at wars. Jews, Italians. What do you think? Part of the fact there are some people who are just naturally born criminals, but they protected themselves. They went a little extreme with the mob, but
Right.
you know,
You,
but this
and you think
country,
about it too, is all a lot of cities were that same exact way. Even the city that I live in, it was the Germans and Italians were on the north side, the Irish were on the west side, you know the you the Polish and another ethnicity were on the east side, and then everybody else was on the south side that weren't European
and they
in
had
descent.
catchy names for them: Germantown, in
Yeah,
the upper mid upper west side of New York, Little Italy,
Little Italy. Yeah,
Chinatown.
yeah,
There was no the Irish were really in a lovely name. It was called Hell's Kitchen. Yeah, and the Jews were in the Lower East Side. I mean, we're so good at titling. We've had this
yeah,
discussion before.
yep.
You know, I don't think as part of freedom you have the right to put a title on somebody.
No,
You know, it really comes down to them and us, them and us, them and us. That tribal thing. Um, it we have been prejudiced against anybody who's not us. Us meaning Anglo-Saxon Protestants,
yep,
because Anglo-Saxon Protestants did not like Catholics.
nope.
So it's the interpretation of what freedom means to the individual obviously changes from individual to individual,
Yes,
and it doesn't matter what's written in a law. Thou shalt not steal. Mm-hmm. Thou shalt not kill. Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about it?
Right. But it,
you know,
and you
it,
think about it too, is that we could go even as far as back as you talk about American freedom and the United States of America and everything, but when the Europeans came over here and then decimated the Native American population because they thought they were savages, that they and just killed them off and took their land. I mean, another example of how you just use power to take what you want. Well, that's not freedom either.
what's interesting about that is they would not have survived the first winter if it wasn't for the native people.
Yep. Yep.
Not one bit would they have survived,
Nope.
but they did. So they naturally said, "Well, good, thanks, fuck you."
Yep. Yep. And I'll take your land and have a nice
What I
day.
always found interesting is why did the Puritans leave England to come to the New World? Why? You
Because they
remember?
were sick of the oppressive government in England.
Yeah, freedom of religion.
Yep.
Freedom.
Freedom.
naturally they come here, and if you're not them,
Yep. You
it's
get no
a
freedoms and you will be
I mean,
killed.
the irony of this country just not it just amazes
Yep.
me. You
Yeah.
know, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Again, if they had said mankind, you would have understood it meant everybody. But no, men. And we had this discussion. Um, you couldn't vote. Didn't matter what color you were. You couldn't vote back then unless you owned land.
Right. Right. And there was only one class of person that was owning land. I joke with, I actually tongue in cheek, I joke with my wife all the time because I tell her, before the 1950s, I said, women just did as they were told because you didn't have the right to vote. Yeah.
Well, they had the right to vote, but they still did it. I
Yeah.
had my chiropractor's former receptionist. When we would have conversations while I was waiting to go into the chiropractor, and she would always say, "Oh, I'm not like that." I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I'm like a 1950s housewife. My husband says do, don't. I follow his instructions." I went,
Nice.
"Wow."
But think about how many women from that generation, that baby boomer or before generation, that once they get married, it was like they signed off their freedoms. They lost their entire identity. I can remember working at 911 and taking a 911 call, and this woman, elderly woman, would be calling up for an ambulance for her husband, and like, okay, we'll send the ambulance. What's your name? Mrs. Smith. That was her name. Okay, what's your first name?
This is,
Yeah.
you know, my mother. She could have started the women's movement. She worked. I think she stayed home once my daughter, my sister and I were born. Yeah, maybe a couple of years, and she went to work. She she goes, I remember having a discussion. I think I told you this. I came home from there. I was in college. I came home one day and I said, "What do you think of this bra burning thing and the women's movement?" She goes, "I've been freeing my own woman since I was born. I don't need to burn a bra." So my mother
and
was
there you go.
my father would tell her to do something, and in her own way, she'd go like this.
But and there it is right there. That I think that wraps it up nicely in a bow is your freedoms, your individual freedoms, as long as you're not breaking laws, your individual freedoms are based on you and your beliefs and your ethics and your morals and your upbringing. Um, and you're free to choose to express yourself in that way if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I think we have to start, as a final thought, putting leaders in place that will, kind of like cowboys, round up the people and stop this tribal crap.
Yes.
There's only one race on this planet, one,
Yep.
and it's called human.
Yes.
And that does not denote male, female, they, them, thou, whatever. It's human. And until we get rid of the titles we've given each other
Yep.
and realize that hate doesn't get you anywhere, like Lenin said, all you need is love.
Yes.
Very powerful, more powerful than any drug on the planet.
Yep.
You have the right to be free. Exercise it correctly,
Yes.
my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree
Thank you very
100%.
much.
Yeah. Mic drop. Boop. But you're right. Let's all be humans. Let's treat each other with kindness and respect, human to human, and and just leave it at that. Leave all the titles, the labels, the other crap out of it. What we can't rewrite history. We can't. We can't go back and right the wrongs of 100 or 200 years ago. And to keep fighting that fight and dying on that sword does nothing but continue to project those titles and labels and put everybody in a box.
Yeah,
We
it's
got to stop doing
momentarily.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was stationed in Georgia in the Army, I had fellow soldiers from Alabama, Mississippi, and they used to half jokingly say, we didn't lose the Civil War. The South will rise again. Keep your Confederate money. Um, that's a problem. I
Yeah.
doubt that the Japanese and the Germans kept saying that after World War II.
No,
We're a very strange nation.
we are.
But it kind of makes you wonder if we're the best, what's the worst look like? Oh,
Ugh.
you know,
Yeah.
at least we still, the one thing bringing it back to tying the bow on freedom is we have the right to talk like this. And there's
Yes.
not going to be anyone knocking down my door and coming and putting me in handcuffs and me disappearing. Thank you for that. At
Yes.
least that's still there for now. Let's hope it stays there.
Yeah. And that's the basics behind this podcast. I'd be able to sit down at a virtual coffee table or any kitchen table and have a conversation and treat each other with respect. And that's it. That's the freedom right there. Freedom of respect.
That's it.
Yep.
Nice little bow.
100%. Yeah, there we go. Guys, we appreciate everybody that's tuned in. Maybe you're watching it later on video. If you would like, comment, share it. We'd love to hear your comments, what you think of the podcast, any ideas you have for the podcast. Realistically, it's the only way we're going to build this community that we're trying to build around the podcast. Feel free to reach out to Bob or I, especially on Instagram, but any of the social media outlets. And with that, Bob, I'll let you say adieu.
As always, folks, be nice to each other. Be safe. And that's really
Yes.
important in today's world.
Yep.
And laugh a lot. Talk
Please
next week.
laugh a lot. 100%. Everybody take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Have a great day.